Get your hands off me.
Not until you apologize. Look at what you did.
Damon pointed at Melanie, who was nursing a red mark on her hand.
What's it got to do with a douchebag like you? Anyway, I didn't see her hand, so it's not my fault. Now let go of me and stop yelling at me in front of my friends.
Damon let go of her arm but was still fuming. He knew that Alicia had stood on Melanie's hand on purpose, just as she had deliberately tripped her in the first place. The two squared up to each other, much to the amusement of Alicia's friends, who knew that Damon was no match for her. Abigail arrived and greeted the scene with a derisory snort.
I always had Damon down as a lover, not a fighter. And I can't imagine he's great at that either.
Tiffany gave her a shove.
Shush! Don't make a bad situation any worse.
Abigail frowned.
What do you mean? I'm only sticking up for you. Or have you forgotten how he tried to humiliate you at your party? Giving you a speck of dust as a present? Remember?
Tiffany wanted to explain that the so-called speck of dust was in fact a highly valuable gift, but it was clear that Abigail wasn't in the mood to listen. Instead, Tiffany tried to steer her friend back to what was happening ahead of them.
Why are you being so mean about Damon anyway? Alicia tripped Melanie over on purpose. She's a bully, and Damon is doing the decent thing and calling her out on it.
What?
Abigail's voice rose to new heights.
Don't talk garbage. Anyway, I pity the poor soul who has to rely on that simp to stand up for them. Alicia's gonna make mincemeat out of him.
Tiffany stared at her friend, opened her mouth to reply, then thought better of it and turned her attention back to Damon, who was helping Melanie up out of the mud.
Are you okay?
Melanie shook her head as she ineffectually brushed at her clothes and calmly resumed her place in the line for the badminton courts.
Does this happen a lot?
Damon asked her gently. Receiving no response, he rounded on Alicia.
Apologize to her right now.
Alicia's lips curled into a smile.
What? Are you kidding me? Why should I apologize to her? She was in such a hurry that she pushed past me, splashing me with mud. Just look, these are absolutely ruined.
Alicia pointed at her sweatpants.
I'm supposed to be going on a date straight after this. How can I possibly go in this state? She should be the one apologizing to me.
Damon looked as closely as he dared at Alicia's sweatpants.
I can't see any mud.
It's right there, doofus. And these are designer exclusives. Do you even know how much these cost?
Ah, so this is all about money, right? Well, if that's all.
Seeing Damon delve a hand into his pocket riled Alicia even further.
No, that is not what this is about. This was her fault. Why are you standing up for her and making me out to be the jerk?
So what if she did splash you? Why shouldn't I stand up for her? She certainly didn't deserve to be tripped over and stamped on. All I'm asking is that you do the decent thing, if you're capable of that, and apologize to her now.
Words stuck in Alicia's throat. She hadn't seen this side of Damon before. In a fury, she stamped her feet and shouted,
"Oh, how dare you treat me like this? You're no better than a bully. And you hurt my arm when you grabbed me. You'll regret this, Damon Hemsworth. Just you wait and see."
And with that, she turned on her heel and ran off. The rest of the people in the line outside the badminton courts were stunned into silence. Ignoring the combined gaze of his fellow students, Damon turned his attention back to Melanie.
Are you okay?
Melanie nodded and, with her right palm facing her, touched her fingers to her chin and then moved them forward, keeping eye contact with Damon the whole time. He nodded and smiled.
No need to thank me. I'm just glad you're okay.
The exchange was met with derision and cruel comments from the onlookers.
Pass the sick bag.
Such a simp. First Jessica, then Tiffany, and now he's moved on to mute Melanie.
Who would have thought it? I never had him pegged as such a ladies' man. Jessica and Tiffany were clearly out of his league, so he's gone after a softer target.
Damon and Melanie were spared further exposure to such comments by the arrival of the badminton coach, who let everyone onto the courts for the session to begin.
You don't have your own racket either, then?
Damon asked Melanie as they selected one each from the collection brought by the coach.
I couldn't believe it when I saw how much they cost. Maybe if I turn out to be any good at this, I'll save up.
Melanie smiled in return, then twirled her racket before making a couple of practice strokes through thin air.
Okay, so you're already pretty good. I get it. Just go easy on me, can you?
For the rest of the session, they allowed the game to do the talking for them. While the rest of her friends played badminton, Alicia ran back to her dormitory, throwing herself onto her bed as soon as she got to her room and reaching for her cell. As the call connected, she launched into a tearful tirade.
Babe, something terrible just happened. I know we were due to meet after class, but I need to see you right away. I've been bullied by one of the students, and I didn't do anything to deserve it. He just grabbed me by the arm and accused me of doing something that I didn't do.
Anyone overhearing the conversation might have expected the person at the other end of the line to be one of Alicia's fellow students, or a boyfriend from back home. Instead, it was a man in his 40s with a bald patch covering most of his head, leaving a tuft of hair in the center. Charles Baleford, faculty member at Hillwood University, put his work to one side as he listened to the sorry tale.
One of the students, you say? Who was it? Don't worry, darling. I'm on my way.
Having heard Alicia's tale in greater detail after arriving in her dorm, Charles got up from the bed, held her hand, and smiled down at her.
Leave this to me, honey. I'm sure I can find someone willing to send him packing. Damon Hemsworth, did you say?
Yes, that's him. It's so kind of you to do this for me. I love you so much.
Alicia stood up, flung her arms around Charles, and kissed him full on the mouth before pulling away, a smile twitching at the corners of her mouth.
You might have money, Damon,
She thought.
but guess who has the power around here?
She chuckled to herself when she thought about what everyone would say when Damon was kicked out of the university. Damon returned his racket to the coach, collected his sweatshirt, and was heading for the locker room when he bumped into Samuel White. Surprised to see any member of the academic teaching staff in the sports ground, he raised a quizzical eyebrow.
Damon, come with me to my office. Collect your stuff together quickly. You're leaving this university.
I might have known.
He thought.
He's never liked me. Maybe he's run out of reasons not to award me the funding I'm entitled to.
Damon had needed to work several part-time jobs to fund his studies. He wondered what excuse the professor had come up with to get rid of him. The announcement was greeted with mirth by several students who were nearby.
He had that coming. No one messes with Alicia and gets away with it.
And was it worth it? All for the sake of Melanie? I wouldn't risk my future on someone like her, that's for sure.
Do they think that just because I can't speak, I can't hear either? Melanie wondered. Then she realized that the other students probably simply didn't care whether she heard what they were saying or not. Either way, it's not right that anyone should get into trouble for taking my side for a change, she thought. She pulled Damon's sleeve, making him turn to face her, and shook her head. Damon acknowledged her warning with a brief smile, and then winked before turning back to face Mr. White.
So are you going to expel me, Professor?
Mr. White responded with a snort.
What do you think? Now get your stuff and come with me.
Damon grinned back at him, thinking there had been a time when he would have been begging the teacher for mercy and pleading with him to let him stay and complete his studies.
But that was when I thought this was the only way to get a good job and make Mom happy. If you only knew, Professor, how things have changed.
He thought. A buzzing from his cell caught his attention. Retrieving it from his pocket, he saw a message.
Mr. Hemsworth, when can we meet?
The sender of the message was Jack Davis, an official from the Hillwood Department of Education. When Damon had talked about investments with Thomas, he had been disinterested in the usual sort of businesses favored by the Serafino family. Enhancing his standing in society had never been his thing. Instead, his priority had been to focus on encouraging talent. To that end, he had made a sizable donation to the education department. He had specified that a portion of it be used to allow poorer students in Hillwood University to receive their education without having to spread themselves thin by working at the same time. He thought. He replied. Damon looked up at Mr. White.
Where did you say we were going?
Is it any wonder you're being kicked out when you pay so little attention? We're going to my office.
Damon chuckled as he typed his reply.
Meet me at Mr. White's office. It's on level 17.
Seeing the student seemingly distracted by his cell only served to further infuriate the professor.
What's wrong with you? Can't you take anything seriously? What more do I have to say to convince you? Your grades may well be good, but the incident in the live streaming room the other day was a serious dent to the university's reputation. You were lucky to get away with that. But today has been the final straw. You can't treat your fellow students like that. We will not tolerate bullying at Hillwood. It's been agreed with a faculty member that you need to go. You know what that means, don't you? You're being expelled, kicked out.
Oh,
he yelled. Damon nodded slowly.
well, let's go and see who gets the boot first, shall we? Me or you? Thanks for explaining what that meant.